The example there.
The beef industry would be an example, or even dairy. People should check out the...
You can see Washington Journal every morning at 7 Eastern on our companion network, C-SPAN. We are going back live now to the U.S. Senate. Senators returning from their weekly party caucus lunches after earlier today blocking a measure that hoped to prevent the doubling of student loan interest rates from 3.4 to 6.8%. It's due to go into effect on July 1st. And now live to the Senate floor.
That just took place here a few hours ago, where our Republican colleagues voted to filibuster our efforts to make sure that student loans in this country do not double from 3.4 to 6.8% in July. I think everybody understands that the young people in our country today, in the midst of this terrible recession, are facing extraordinary challenges. They are paying 3 to 4 times as much than their parents paid for a college education, regardless of whether they attend a private or public college. And when they receive their diplomas, they have no guarantee, given the state of the economy today, that they are going to be able to get a job and earn the income to pay off those debts. Given the challenges that college students today are facing, the least we can do is to keep student loan interest rates at a low rate for another year. The interest rate on subsidized Stafford loans has been steadily reduced since Congress passed the College Cost Reduction and Access Act of 2007. But if Congress does nothing, interest rates on subsidized Stafford loans are set to double from 3.4% to 6.8% on July 1st, 2012. When we talk about Stafford loans, we are talking about student loans for students from low and moderate income backgrounds. Subsidized Stafford loans are need-based and targeted to students who otherwise might not be able to attend college. Nearly 1/3 of undergraduates have benefited from these low-interest federal loans, and if the interest rate doubles this year, the rate hike will impact up to 9 million students, and we must not allow that to happen. Among the students who will be impacted are 19,000 young people from the state of Vermont. In my state, nearly 70% of college graduates are carrying student loan debt, 70%. And on average, that debt is $30,000, which puts Vermont at the 6th highest student loan debt in the country. Mr. President, everybody understands that in order to get ahead in the economy today, it is very important that one has a college degree. The cost of college education is soaring. And in the state of Vermont, and I have talked to many of these young people, and throughout this country, students are leaving college deeply, deeply in debt. 19,000 students in the state of Vermont are on Stafford loans. And if interest rates double from 3.4 to 6.8%, it will make their current situations, which are very difficult, much, much worse. So, Mr. President, I hope that our Republican colleagues will end their filibuster. I hope we can get back to work as soon as possible in passing a bill which will maintain Stafford loan rates at 3.4%. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.
President, I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. President?
Senator from California.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the time from 2:15 until 5:15,
The Senator's in a quorum call.
I would ask that it be called off.
The objection is ordered.
I ask unanimous consent that the time from 2:15 till 5:15 be equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees, and that all quorum calls in that period also be equally divided.
With objections ordered.
And, Mr. President, I just thought before I put the details out on the impact of not helping students in this difficult economic climate get student loans that they can afford, I just wanted to say that I was stunned that my Republican friends refused to give us a vote to proceed to the issue. And I think every student in America today should turn their focus to this chamber, because the Republican Party today made it impossible for us to lower your student loan rates. They made it impossible. And this is going to mean thousands and thousands of dollars over the life of a student loan. And so while the Republicans are calling for major tax cuts for billionaires and millionaires of $100,000, $200,000 a year in cuts, they don't have the heart to help middle-class students get a break on their interest rates for college and for graduate school. I find it appalling. And if anyone wants to know the difference between the parties, start with this. Who do you fight for when you're here? We all say we're for the next generation. We all have the speeches. Oh, they're terrific. They are beautiful, each party. But when push comes to shove, who's voting to help our students get an interest rate that they can afford so they're not shackled to a high interest rate at a time of historic low interest rates? Democrats are on their side, and all we have to do is look at the vote today. There's nothing else. You don't have to understand any more than the Republicans blocked us from debating the importance of lowering interest on student loans. So I'll be back and put in the record individual stories from my constituents. But let's wake up, America. Parents, wake up. Students, wake up. The Democrats today proved that we're on your side. The Republicans proved they were not. Period. That vote, it says it all. It's not complicated. They'll make it complicated. They'll talk about procedure and this and that. The bottom line is the bottom line. The Republicans voted not to allow us to vote on ways and methods to lower interest rates for our students. So don't be fooled. You'll hear speeches on why they voted no and this and that, and they'll come up with things. The bottom line is they wouldn't even let us debate this. I am stunned today. I had assumed we would be on that bill. So, America, if you look in today, you look at the Senate floor and you don't see much activity except a few of us coming to speak, and you thought today was the day we were going to vote to lower interest on student loans, wake up to reality. It's called a filibuster. We were stopped by the Republicans once again, just like they have stopped us time and time again. Oh, they come to the floor with every reason you can imagine. But we've got news. We have two independent scholars that wrote a very important paper. They are nonpartisan. And you know what they said in this paper? They said, you know, we used to think it was both sides that were stopping progress. Now we know it's one side. It's the Republican side. And today is yet another example. And I hope everyone within the sound of my voice, and you're going to hear stories today about what's happening, and I hope people will write us all, email us with your stories, tell us what it means to you to have to spend thousands more unnecessarily on a student loan. Give us the stories. Let us tell the stories. I hope you will send us those stories, and I hope you will send a message to those who voted to filibuster this very important legislation today, that they are not on the side of the American people, they are not on the side of the working families, they are not on the side of the middle class, they are not on the side of economic progress, they are not on the side of economic growth. And, Mr. President, I thank you so much for the time, and I would yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Wow. That was interesting. I remember the senator who was speaking before me, before we left, she was praising the Republicans for working with her, and one Republican specifically, about how appreciative she was about working together and taking the time in a bipartisan manner to work forward on a very important piece of legislation that she was spearheading. And we worked forward. We didn't filibuster that. We didn't filibuster the postal bill. We didn't filibuster the violence against women. We didn't filibuster the crowdfunding or the insider trading bill, but all of a sudden we're filibustering now. No, listen, bottom line is we want to have the opportunity to have an alternative proposal and to have a full and fair debate. And I think the American people are smarter. I know the American people are smarter than that. And, Mr. President, I stand before you today to just reference that most students and parents know that in July the fixed interest rates on subsidized government student loans are set to double. That was very eloquently pointed out just now. But let's be clear, the vast majority of the members of this body want to prevent that from happening. I think that's a no-brainer. Unfortunately, today we voted on a bill that is not bipartisan. It's very clear that it's not bipartisan. To raise taxes on subchapter S corporations, which are the people that are doing some of the very serious job creation in this country, it's not going to pass the House. It's not going to pass muster for and with the American people. It was not negotiated in good faith, and as I said, it has no chance of passing in the House of Representatives. And once again, we're preparing for an unnecessary political battle. That's kind of what happens. We hit a political battle, we have a little rough spot, then we do two or three things that are really good, and then we kind of get stuck again, and then we do two or three things that are really good, and you know, it's unnecessary. We need to work in good faith to negotiate a compromise instead. A 100% Democratic bill isn't going to pass, folks, listening up there, listening on TV, and a 100% Republican bill isn't going to pass. It needs to be a bipartisan, bicameral bill that the President will sign. That's how we passed some of the most important pieces of legislation dealing with ethics on the insider trading bill that I was proud to sponsor with Senator Gillibrand in a bipartisan manner. We got it through and out of this chamber and passed and signed in record time by the President. We just passed the postal bill. We did the violence against women. We did the crowdfunding, the jobs package. We've done these things, so we need to work in the same manner. And with so many recent graduates, unemployed or underemployed, members of Congress need to work together to find a way to keep the interest rates where they currently are. Rather than wasting time trying to blame the other side, let's try to build some bridges. As we actually, before we left, I thought we had done. I was looking forward to coming back after the week off and getting right back at it and working on important things like cybersecurity and like the student loan interest issue. So let's allow people of good faith to figure out how to solve these very real problems. And that's why today, as I've referenced to many of my colleagues in our weekly caucuses and through email, a bill that would extend the 3.4% rate for another year without raising taxes as being proposed, or by cutting sacred programs, which is also being proposed. My bill, the Subsidized Stafford Loan Reduced Interest Rate Extension Act, would extend the subsidized rate for a year. And to pay for it, I suggest a non-controversial option, reducing federal improper payments. Now, we've all heard about the amazing amount of waste that goes on just by paying people that are dead, that shouldn't be getting their payments, and also paying other entities that have either already been paid or being improperly paid. It's billions and billions of dollars. The bill establishes a government-wide do-not-pay list and requires new audit pilot programs across federal agencies to provide more tools to battle back and make sure we can recapture those monies. And let me give you a few examples of the improper payments so the folks up there listening and watching on TV can kind of reference. And payments that I hear working as a ranking member of the Federal Financial Management Subcommittee, a committee that Senator Carper and I have been diligently working in a bipartisan manner, once again, to try to solve problems. Medicaid, which is the primary source of health coverage for over 50 million Americans, made an estimated $21.9 billion of your tax dollars in improper payments in 2011. The federal state unemployment insurance programs made an estimated $13.7 billion of improper payments in 2011. SSI made an estimated $4.6 billion in improper payments in 2011. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're looking for $6 billion to pay for the student loan extension. I just referenced, well, 21, 31, 4, 37, almost $38, $39 billion. We need 6. That's it. You know, we spend over $1 billion in payments that are sent to dead people, as I said. $1 billion we pay. Can you believe that? We pay $1 billion to people that are dead. Billions in payments that are sent to the wrong recipient, billions in incorrect amounts sent to the right recipients, and billions in payments where documentation is missing and where the recipient is not using the funds for the intended purpose. All we have to do is be marginally successful, just marginally successful, to recover the $6 billion we need to pay for this very important student loan program. When government is so wasteful, raising taxes should not always be the first thing that we look at. How about reestablishing the trust with the American taxpayer, the people that are listening up in the gallery and on TV? Why is it every single time we're going to raise taxes on one particular group or another? This time we're going after the small business owners, the sub-S corporation owners. And I'm not saying that my bill is the only answer, but it does provide a neutral starting point for both sides to come together in a truly bipartisan manner, as we've done before, to find a solution that we can all live with. And I'm willing to work with my colleagues, and I'm willing to consider all options that will allow us to move forward. And if we fail to act, we will burden our students who are going to college with an extra $1,000 in student loan interest, just because we couldn't find a compromise. Pretty simple. You know, the student loan situation, as we're all discussing and as has been discussed throughout this country through various media outlets and the like, and they're focusing more and more and more on this, which I think is critical, is we need to start a national conversation about addressing the primary issue affecting families with kids in college, the cost of annual tuition, room and board. Between 2000 and 2010, the cost of tuition, room and board rose 36%, and that's after adjusting for inflation. That means that students are now paying a third more for the same education they would have gotten 10 years ago. And looking at previous decades shows a similar trend from 90 to 2000. The increase was 26%, 80 to 90 was 37%. So why are students paying so much more for the same education? As we know, it's a huge problem for families. And while tuition is skyrocketing, there is still a total lack of transparency when it comes to schools' financial decisions. If the recent reports of outrageous administrator and faculty compensation packages are any indication, it would seem that students and parents are funding administrators and faculty members million-dollar salaries. Instead of being surprised by every new expose of outrageous pay packages, I propose increasing transparency by requiring schools to post their financial disclosures online, right on their websites, so everyone can see them. This would not be hard to do. In fact, if the IRS already requires nonprofit institutions of higher education to file the IRS Form 990 yearly, which includes disclosure of the compensation packages for the highest paid employees. It also provides a financial snapshot of the school's finances and also how schools will choose to spend their tuition dollars. And making the information available so easily online will increase transparencies and allow students and parents and the general public to check the school's spending decisions way before they make headline news. On the outrageous pay issue, Sunlight may help begin to solve the spending problem associated with the high cost of education. No one disputes the importance of a college education, but we're setting our students up for failure by giving them above-market student loans and not requiring our schools to be transparent about their financial operations. So my suggestion, Mr. President, is let's work together. Let's not fail our students. It's time we finally focus the federal government on how we can set our students up for success instead of failure. So, Mr. President, I want to thank you, and I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from Iowa.
Mr. President, I ask that further proceedings on the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection, so ordered.
Well, Mr. President, here we are, an empty Senate chamber, while families across the country are wondering whether or not they're going to have to come up with more money to pay higher interest rates on their student loans beginning on July the 1st. It's going to happen unless we take action. And we've tried to take action, but quite frankly, my friends on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, won't even let us go to the bill. We had our vote here almost 3 hours ago. We recessed for our different party conferences, as we do every Tuesday. And so here we sit, without being able to even proceed to the bill, because the Republicans have voted it against closing down debate and moving to the bill and offering amendments and having an up or down vote. This is a pattern that's all too familiar. As we know, over the last few years, more and more filibusters, more and more motions, cloture motions, as they say, to end the debate. It's really unfair to families and students all over America. And here I address my comments to students. They're the ones that are trying to get a higher education because they know that is the pathway to the gateway to the middle class in America. Our young people today know that in the future, the jobs of the future are going to require a higher education. They understand that. And so many are scrambling to try to put together the resources to pay for college. We had a young woman this morning Clarissa McCants from Howard University, who spoke with us. First in her family to go to college. From Philadelphia. She goes to Howard. Very poor background, very poor family. She's put together Pell Grants, work-study programs, summer work jobs that she's worked on, and plus her subsidized loans, which, if I'm not mistaken, she had somewhere in the neighborhood of $13,000 or $15,000 right now in debt. The last thing Clarissa McCants needs is to have an additional $1,000 a year put on her student loan interest. That's what's going to happen on July the 1st unless we act here. So it's really unfair to her and millions of students like her all over the country that we sit here and do nothing, while they wonder whether or not they're going to have to pay more in their interest charges on July the 1st. It's really unfair. We have, on our side, we have a solid proposal to keep the interest rates down for the next year to 3.4%, where they are right now, rather than having them double to 6.8%. And to do that, to pay for it, we have proposed that we close a glaring loophole in the tax code, which applies only to subchapter S corporations. Now, a lot of people say, what's that gobbledygook mean, subchapter S? Well, subchapter S corporations are, think of it this way, small corporations, very small compared to the giant corporations you normally think of, very small. And within that small universe of subchapter S corporations, as they're called, there's even a smaller universe. And that small universe is comprised of professionals like lawyers and accountants, people who give advice, do their own work, and they form a small corporation. Because of the fog that surrounds whether or not someone is paid a salary or paid from dividends, the many people who form these subchapter S corporations are not paying their fair share of Social Security and Medicare taxes. What we have proposed is that we draw a bright line so that people know whether or not they're getting paid a salary or wages or whether it's coming out of dividends. The Joint Tax Committee says this will raise for us $9 billion over the next several years, enough to help us pay for keeping the interest rates low. So our proposal accomplishes two good things. Closes the tax loophole that's glaring. I should say three things. It closes that loophole. Secondly, it puts more money into Medicare and Social Security trust funds. And third, it helps us keep interest rates low for students in this country. Well, you'd think that would be a no-brainer. Well, I think most people will say that is kind of a no-brainer, but our friends on the Republican side refuse to even let us bring the bill up for debate and a vote. Now they, my Republican friends, have suggested a different way of paying for this. They want to protect those few people in the subchapter S corporations, very wealthy people, from paying those taxes. They have suggested, the Republicans have suggested instead that we take all of the money to pay for keeping the interest rates low out of the Prevention and Public Health Trust Fund, the Prevention Fund, as it's known, that is in the Affordable Care Act. Now again, it would drain all the money out of it. It would completely eliminate the program. I suggest that people look at today's headline. Just look at the headline in USA Today. USA Today. Look at the headline this morning. 42% of the adult population by 2030 expected to be obese. By 2030. And out of that, 1 out of every 4 will be severely obese. The same report was also in the Washington Post this morning. Study predicts 42% of Americans will be obese by 2030. In which will shorten life and incurs large medical expenses. In fact, if obesity stays at its current level, 34%, and does not increase, the savings in projected health care costs will be considerable, about $550 billion, half $1 trillion. Well, that's what the Prevention Fund is doing. It is out there working every day. It's only been in existence a couple of years now, putting things in place to prevent people from being obese, to prevent kids from getting adult onset diabetes at ages 10 and 11 and 12 years of age. Look at it this way. In 1980, only 15% of Americans were obese. In 1980. Today, it's about, as I said, about 34%. What if we had had in place in the 80s and 90s and in the last decade the prevention fund that we have that does all of the things necessary to help people make healthy choices and to lead healthy lives and not become obese? Think of the savings that we would have in our health care system today if we would have had a prevention fund like that in 1980, and rather than having 34% obese people in America today, we had 15 or 16%. We'll project that forward to 2030. If we don't act now, 42%. And again, if it goes there, it's going to cost us $550 billion in the next 20 years. $550 billion. So preventing this, which we know we can do, we have evidence-based proof that certain interventions and programs work. And not only does it keep obesity down, all the other related illnesses like diabetes and heart disease will be lessened, thus saving us even more money. Well, the Prevention Fund is what the Republicans want to kill. They want to eliminate it. They want to eliminate it. Well, I think that is disappointing and disturbing after all that we know, after all that we have seen in the past on prevention and public health and what we can do to prevent illness, prevent obesity, prevent diabetes in children. And to say we're not going to do that, we're not going to put the resources forward to prevent it. And we know that for every dollar we spend on prevention, we're reaping anywhere from $3 to $10 or more in just the first couple of years on each dollar that we invest in prevention. And so here we are at an impasse again. Once again, the Senate's at an impasse because we can't move to a bill. We can't amend it. We can't vote on it. We can't even debate it other than talking about it right now like I'm doing. Republicans refuse to let us even get to the bill. Well, we will continue. We will continue to tell the American people what's at stake here and what the differences are. These are policy differences, and the American people should know what those policy differences are. Republicans say they want to keep the student interest rate at 3.4%. We say we do too. Well, okay, then what's the difference? The policy difference is in how we pay for it, how we pay to make sure that we keep the interest rates low. Well, I think the logical thing would be to have the bill come before the Senate floor, offer an amendment. If the Republicans want to offer an amendment to take the money out of the Prevention Fund and kill and eliminate the Prevention Fund, let them offer the amendment and we'll vote on it. We'll see if they have the votes to do that. They can debate it if they want, and we'll be glad to debate and discuss closing this tax loophole on subchapter S corporations. I think that would be a good, healthy debate, and I think it would be a policy difference that the American people should see. Which way would they like to go? Which way would they, the American people, like to go if they really knew the two sources of how we're going to pay for this? Well, we're going to continue to talk about this because I think the American people should know what's at stake here. in this filibuster that we have in front of us right now. Now, I know my friends on the other side of the aisle, they say, well, you know, President Obama, he wanted to take some money out of the prevention fund. Well, that did happen. That did happen in order to extend for 1 year the unemployment insurance provisions and also the payroll tax cut this year. And they seem to think that, well, since we've already taken some money out of the prevention fund, we can just kill the whole thing. My analogy this morning, Mr. President, was I said, well, you know, it's one thing to take a couple of pints of blood. It's another thing to take all your blood. So, yeah, they took some nicks out of the prevention fund, which I didn't like and I didn't support, but the fund is still healthy, it's alive, it's doing its job. It could do more if it had more money, but nonetheless, it's still there doing its job. But the Republicans are saying kill the whole thing, drain all the blood out of it. Well, I don't think the American people want to go there, and it seems to me that it just doesn't make common sense that we would pit the health of the American people, and women's health especially, women's health, children's health, the elderly, that are benefiting right now from these prevention funds, benefiting right now. Every person on Medicare gets a free colonoscopy every year when they want it, free breast cancer screening, free cholesterol screening, a free health checkup every year so they know what their health is like and they can take better control of their health. Immunizations, childhood checkups, provisions that go out into communities for healthier living in our communities, better nutrition for our kids in schools, fresh fruits and vegetables, more physical activity. That's all in the prevention fund. And that's what they want to do away with. It's too bad that they're trying to pit the health of our women and children and the future against students. That's just not right. As I've said many times, I keep saying that, you know, that I've heard from the other side that we're going after job creators. See, if we raise the taxes, you see, on a subchapter S corporate, if we don't raise taxes, if we close that loophole, we're hurting job creators. First of all, the provisions in our bill on subchapter S only affects a corporation with 3 or fewer stockholders. Hardly job creators. I mean, if somebody wants to start a corporation, 5, 10, 15, 20, well, that's different. This doesn't touch you. It only touches you if you have less than 3 shareholders, if your income is over $250,000 a year, income, a joint filer, and you are a subchapter S corporation. Right now, some say, well, you know, they can get audited. I had an example I used the other day of a person who was claiming they didn't have to pay their Social Security and Medicare taxes because they were a subchapter S corporation. And the person, the individual, pretty ingenious, had set up a subchapter S corporation, he contributed, he donated his time. And in exchange, he got dividend payments, profits from this subchapter S, as did his wife and I believe his child. There were 3 of them, he, his wife, and child, and did not pay Social Security taxes. Well, he happened to get audited, and the Justice Department took him to court, tax court found out that really he was being paid. He was making a salary, being an income, and he had to pay Social Security taxes on that. Well, when I use that example, my friends on the Republican side said, well, that's just it. See, all we have to do is just audit them, and we don't have to close this loophole. I had to point out that only 0.5% of all filings of subchapter S corporations are ever audited. So if you're out there and there's not a bright line as to whether you are salaried or you're getting dividends, there's kind of a fog out there, why wouldn't I err on the side of saying I don't have to pay those taxes, because the odds are 99.5 to 1 that I'll never get audited. Pretty good odds. Pretty good odds. 99.5% of the time, no one's ever audited. And if you are audited, you get a slap on the wrist, pay a little fine, and move on. And so what our bill does is it provides certainty. It provides certainty to subchapter S corporations that if you fall on this side of the line, you're salaried. If you have less than 3 shareholders. If you fall on the other side, you can get dividends, and that way you don't have to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes. Quite frankly, I think that would be in the best interest of everyone, including the subchapter S corporations. So, Mr. President, again, I ask that the article that appeared in the Washington Post this morning by David Brown appear at this point in the record on the study that predicts 42% of Americans will be obese in 2030.
Without objection.
And again, Mr. President, I hope the Republicans will talk among themselves. I hope they'll listen to the students and their families who don't want to be hung out there this week and next week and on and on and on, not knowing whether or not they're going to have to pay higher interest rates on their student loans. Let's have closure on this. Let's bring the bill up. Let's vote on it. If they have amendments, fine, we'll vote on them. But at least let's move the bill. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask that the unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to spend a little time today talking about what has become known across the country as the Obama economy. This administration, after nearly 4 years, has failed to get this country and to get our economy moving again. Even worse, as I look at it, this administration seems to be taking steps that appear to be methodically and deliberately sabotaging certain parts of our nation's economy. They're doing this in sectors of the economy that apparently, to me, they just don't like. And they're doing it by issuing thousands and thousands of pages of red tape on the very people in this country who have in the past successfully created jobs for Americans. This administration has finalized 1,330 rules that have been deemed what's called economically significant. They proposed over 1,300 additional economically significant rules. So what does this mean, this term, economically significant? Well, those are rules that have an annual impact on the economy of $100 million or more. 57 coal-fired power plants have already announced their closure because of the cumulative effect of these rules on just this one industry. The EPA is proposing regulations on whole sectors of the economy, whether it's issuing new stormwater regulations for existing buildings to requiring costly Clean Water Act permits. They're doing this for ditches on family farms. Thousands of Americans' jobs have already been lost, and others are on the chopping block just due to these rules. Not a new law that's been passed, but the rules that come out from this administration. Each time that the EPA claims that the benefits of the rules vastly outweigh the costs. But the costs are real in terms of real dollars to the economy, and the benefits are unknown. The administration claims that the benefits are in so-called, quote, saved future health care costs. That's how they define it, saved future health care costs. The EPA and this administration has a history of understating the costs and of overstating, in my opinion, the benefits. The EPA's math on the benefits and the costs of their rules is not even close to being accurate. Now, this has been verified in testimony before the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, of which I serve as a member. The EPA rules that set new burdensome limits on emission of pollutants such as carbon dioxide, mercury and sulfur dioxide, well, those rules can have serious costs to plants and factories that then have to upgrade their facilities with costly equipment or simply close to be under the new standards. New standards, not the old standards, but new standards. Those reduction yields few quantifiable benefits to the economy, and that's not me saying it, that's the EPA's own models. They admit that the reductions yield very few quantifiable benefits to the economy. The costs are usually significant to the businesses in terms of the actual expenses, as well as to the public, to the people looking for jobs, in terms of jobs that are lost. The EPA knows no one would buy into their rules with such high price tags. So in order to inflate the so-called benefits of their rules, the EPA says that as a result of having less emission from plants and factories, there must also be reductions in particulate matter or dust at the same time. Well, they then make the inaccurate conclusion that reductions in the dust will somehow yield billions of dollars in health benefits because folks will have healthier lungs and visit the doctor fewer times. These reductions in dust are often in areas where the dust level today already is well within public health safety standards that are set by the EPA. So the folks aren't actually getting sick in those areas anyway. So if people aren't already getting sick in the areas where the EPA is trying to regulate the air, then how is it that they can claim that they're going to save billions of dollars in fewer times visits to the hospital by reducing the dust levels even fewer than today's safe levels? What we know now is that the EPA is cooking the books. At the same time, they're missing the real public health threat that they themselves, the EPA, is making worse. That is the public health threat from high unemployment. I recently released a report, and it's entitled Red Tape Making Americans Sick, a new report on health impacts of high unemployment. Red Tape Making Americans Sick, a new report on the health impacts of high unemployment. Studies show EPA rules cost Americans their jobs and their health. This is a report submitted by the Subcommittee on Clean Air and Nuclear Safety by the minority subcommittee staff, and I ask, Mr. President, that this be included in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a comprehensive report, and it contains expert testimony before the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee and the best scientific medical research from institutions such as Johns Hopkins, Yale University, and others. This key medical research and testimony on the impact of unemployment on public health is irrefutable. The report concludes, high unemployment increases the likelihood of hospital visits, of illnesses, and of premature death in communities. That's high unemployment. High unemployment raises health care costs, raising further questions about the claimed health savings of the EPA's regulations. And high unemployment hurts children's health and family well-being. On June 15, 2011, Dr. Harvey Brenner of Johns Hopkins University testified before the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Here are the facts. He says, quote, the unemployment rate is well established as a risk factor for elevated illness and mortality rates in epidemiological studies performed since the early 1980s. Well-known fact now for over 30 years. In addition to the influences on mental disorder, suicide and alcohol abuse and alcoholism, unemployment is also an important risk factor in cardiovascular disease, an overall decrease in life expectancy. And I come to you, Mr. President, as a physician, someone who's practiced medicine in Wyoming, taking care of Wyoming families for a quarter of a century, and I will tell you this is perfectly in keeping with my experience of the years of medicine that I've practiced. Yale researcher Dr. William Galo's paper on the impact of late career job loss reports, quote, results suggest that the true costs of late career unemployment exceed financial deprivation and include substantial health consequences. Substantial health consequences. He goes on to say, physicians who treat individuals who lose jobs as they near retirement should consider the loss of employment a potential risk factor
for adverse vascular health changes. So what's that? Well, it's stroke, high blood pressure, heart disease, major killers, major things that result in disability, in long-term problems, and in increasing the cost of care. So let's look also now at the impact of joblessness on children. The National Center for Health Statistics concluded, quote, children in poor families were 4 times as likely to be in fair or poor health as children in families that are not poor. Well, I have seen, Mr. President, firsthand how economic challenges affect Americans' health and the quality of life. In my medical opinion, this country faces a worsening health threat from unemployment. Now, well over 30 months of unemployment rates well over 8%. Now, I've urged the EPA to seriously consider the impacts of these rules and the new rules they continue to come out with, these rules and how they have a bad impact on families, on pregnant women, on children, on the elderly. The EPA has not looked at these serious health impacts that their rules result in. The EPA continues to hide behind computer models, not real people, but computer models that churn out inflated, fictitious, so-called benefits of health. The time to get serious about public health is now. Now, in fact, there was a USA Today article on Monday of last week, and I brought a copy along because it was very disturbing, Mr. President. It's a copy on the front page, USA Today, Monday, April 30th, 2012, Police Tie Domestic Violence Economy. Survey, incidents rise after financial collapse. The article states, Mr. President, that police are encountering more domestic violence related to the sluggish economy, a national survey of law enforcement agencies find. These are law enforcement agencies across the country, their national survey. The article quotes Camden, New Jersey Police Chief Scott Thompson, who stated it is, quote, impossible, Chief Thompson says, impossible to separate the economy from the domestic turmoil in the city where unemployment is 19%. Camden Police Chief Scott Thompson went on to say, quote, when stresses in the home increase because of unemployment and other hardships, domestic violence increases. He says, we see it on the street. So, Mr. President, these types of reports of increased domestic violence due to unemployment are not just being reported in Camden, New Jersey. The article cites Chuck Wexler, executive director of the Washington-based law enforcement think tank, who expressed serious concerns with the rising violence. He says, you're dealing with households in which people have lost jobs or are in fear of losing their jobs. Because there's a lot of fear out there, Mr. President. He goes on to say, this is an added stress that can push people to the breaking point. And I agree, it is certainly what I saw as well in my days of medical training and medical practice. The health crisis from unemployment under this administration is getting worse. In May of 2012, Christian Science Monitor, just May 4th, their article on the unemployment rate says, quote, while the economy added 115,000 net jobs in April, some 350,000 Americans gave up looking for work. So for every one new job that was added, 3 people gave up looking for work. That has the effect of reducing the unemployment rate because by the federal government way of calculating it, those people no longer count as part of the labor force. As a result, the share of Americans who are part of the labor force, either working or actively looking for work, has reached a 30-year low. You can add those numbers and look at those and say 350,000 people and put that to the list of folks who are now at risk for serious health impacts due to the Obama economy. If we want to make Americans healthy, we need to get Americans back to work. We need to get the EPA out of the business of making folks unemployed across this country. Each new job is a job that will put food on the table for struggling families and help keep medical costs under control. New jobs will keep thousands of Americans out of the doctor's office and onto the playground. Creating jobs will keep those nearing retirement from paying for more prescription drugs so they can spend more time and money on their grandchildren. Creating jobs will ensure that the next generation will be healthier than the last. Let's work together to improve public health by reducing this administration's red tape that is putting so many Americans out of work. The health and happiness of the American people depends upon it. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.